Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. The clink of her glass was the sharpest sound I heard that night. Not because it was loud, it wasn't, but because it came right after a sentence I was never supposed to hear. We were at her company's year-end gala. Not just a dinner, a whole chandelier and violin players situation. Tables wrapped in velvet, wine that smelled like old money, and name cards printed in gold leaf. The kind of event where you don't belong unless your LinkedIn title sounds like a made-up word. Darcy thrived in this world. She belonged to it. Every handshake, every air kiss, all choreographed. She was a different person here. Taller, even. I was just the accessory. I stayed near the back at first, watching her mingle from behind a pillar like a poorly paid security guard. She didn't introduce me to anyone. Didn't even glance in my direction. That was fine. I've gotten used to that version of her. The one that forgets I exist unless I mess up a photo or sneeze too loud. Then I heard it. From behind a wall of laughter and silverware. Over the swell of a live string quartet. Greg? God, he was my biggest mistake. Another woman giggled. No way. I swear. I was 25, I thought he was safe. Turns out he was just small. Laughter again. Not cruel, not loud, but worse. Casual. Dismissive. Like I was some failed recipe from her college years. I didn't move. My hands were still in my pockets. I stared at the champagne tower like it might collapse under the weight of irony. I didn't know who she was talking to. I didn't care. All I knew was that my wife had just called me her mistake. Not in a fight. Not in anger. In comfort. In confidence. In front of people. And she smiled when she said it. She smiled. The rest of the evening blurred. I sat at the table next to a guy named Lyle who talked about crypto the entire time. I didn't eat, didn't drink, didn't speak. Just sat there, knowing my wife was 3 seats down, laughing at stories that didn't include me and rewriting the ones that did. But I wasn't planning a scene. No, I planned something quieter. Something that would wipe that smile off her face before the dessert cart ever came out. And I made sure the whole room saw it. I didn't storm out. That's not how I do things. I'm not the dramatic exit type. I'm the stay silent and die inside type. So I stayed. I stayed through the wine refills and toasts. I stayed through the HR guy's speech that tried too hard to be funny. I stayed while she leaned into some executive I'd never seen before, laughing in that light, empty way she always saved for other men. My chest felt like it had been scraped raw, but I still nodded along when Lyle started showing me pictures of his dog's Halloween costume. I excused myself once, said I needed the restroom, but really, I just needed to breathe. I stood outside the ballroom doors, gripping the edge of the sink in the bathroom, staring at myself in the mirror. I looked like a man who had been erased. Even my reflection didn't seem all the way there. But that's when it happened, that flicker of something, some buried instinct that whispered, don't let this slide. Not this time. And I listened. When I got back to the table, she didn't even notice I'd been gone. That told me everything. I watched her as she sipped from her champagne flute, her lipstick perfectly pressed into the glass, her eyes twinkling at someone else's husband. And I realized something important. She didn't think I'd ever do anything. Not because she thought I was kind, but because she thought I was weak. Predictable. Harmless. That was her mistake. As the main course was cleared, she finally turned to me and asked, "You okay? You've been quiet." I smiled. Not out of kindness, but because I had made a decision while washing my hands minutes earlier. A quiet, irreversible decision. I looked at her and said, "I'm great. Actually, I left you a surprise in your purse." Her eyebrows lifted and she gave a small laugh. "What kind of surprise?" "You'll see." She tilted her head, then reached under the table for her bag. I watched her fingers pull the zipper down, her expression casual at first, until it wasn't. Her hand froze, her body stiffened. Then she pulled it out. An envelope, unmarked, thin. Her face shifted as she opened it and unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. It wasn't a note. It wasn't some cliché breakup letter. It was a printed screenshot, her text messages with someone named Owen. The messages weren't angry or inappropriate in an obvious way. No naked photos or graphic confessions. But they were worse in their simplicity. Flirtation. Plans. Comments like, "He never notices anything anyway," and "I'll sit by you tonight. Maybe he won't even come." She looked at me, eyes wide now. The color drained from her face like someone had pulled a plug. "You went through my phone?" she hissed, barely moving her lips. "No," I replied, cool as the silverware beside my plate. "You sent the messages on my iPad. You forgot it syncs." She tried to smile again, tried to regain control of the room, but her face wouldn't cooperate. Her laugh faltered. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded the paper and shoved it back in her bag. The woman beside her leaned over with concern, asking if everything was all right. Darcy said nothing. Her joke an hour earlier had gotten plenty of laughs. But now her silence was the loudest thing in that room. And I was just getting started. The moment she folded that paper and pushed it back into her purse, I knew I'd hit a nerve deeper than anything I could have said. Darcy didn't crumble, no, she was too polished for that. But I saw it. That tiny tremor in her bottom lip. The slight delay before she reached for her wine glass, like her hand had to think twice. The way her eyes darted around the table, scanning to see who might have noticed. And oh, they all had. The woman next to her, the one in the sequin dress with the fake lashes and perfect posture, leaned in again, whispering something with a smirk. Darcy nodded, tried to brush it off with a shrug, but her voice had lost its usual rhythm. She wasn't in control anymore. And the funny thing is, I wasn't gloating. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt numb. Numb and suddenly very awake. Like I'd been sleepwalking for the past 3 years and finally bumped into a wall. Dessert came. Chocolate mousse with raspberry drizzle. Everyone around us picked up their spoons like nothing had shifted. But the energy was different. Her laugh was delayed now, more forced. Brent from earlier, the one she had flirted with all night, tried to pull her back into the conversation, but she gave him nothing but tight smiles. That glow she carried with her everywhere had dulled, and I wasn't sure if it would come back. I leaned closer to her, keeping my voice low. "You told him I was your biggest mistake. In case you're wondering, I was 3 feet away." She didn't respond immediately, just stared at her mousse like it might offer her a time machine. Then she whispered, "It was a joke, Greg. God, don't be so sensitive." I let out a laugh. Not loud, not dramatic, but real, right? A joke. Just like Owen. Huh? One big misunderstanding? She turned toward me then, finally, really looking at me. And for a split second, I saw panic. The kind that sits just beneath the surface when someone realizes they've been caught and there's no charm left to hide behind. But then she straightened her back and gave me that same cool corporate smile she used with clients and board members. "We'll talk about this at home." I shook my head. "We won't." Before she could answer, I stood up slowly. Not in a rush. I didn't throw my napkin or knock over my chair. I just placed my phone on the table in front of her. Screen unlocked, camera already recording. Her eyes flicked down and widened. I had recorded everything. The text message screenshots. Her reaction when she found them. Her attempt to gaslight me with that dismissive joke defense. It was all there. Because for once, I didn't want to be the only one who saw the cracks in the porcelain. She hissed under her breath. "What are you doing?" "Making sure you don't rewrite this part of the story too." I didn't wait for dessert. I didn't wait for applause. I walked out while people were still sipping espresso, and her boss, a man I'd only met twice, turned to watch me leave with a confused frown. I stepped outside into the December air, my breath curling in front of me like smoke. For the first time in what felt like years, I wasn't wondering where she was, what she was thinking, or whether I'd done something wrong. I knew exactly what had happened, and what came next would make that little dinner scene look like a warm-up act. Because I wasn't going home. Not yet. Not until she felt what I felt. Not until the mask she wore so easily finally shattered in public. She thought that night would be about her. Another evening to charm and perform. But I'd already rewritten the ending. I didn't go straight home that night. I didn't even go back to my car. I walked, aimlessly at first, letting the cold wind slap some feeling back into my face. I passed glowing windows of restaurants packed with strangers laughing over drinks, and I wondered how many of them were also pretending everything was fine. How many of them sat next to someone they once loved and now couldn't even look at without flinching. The city felt louder than usual, but I was quiet, completely, painfully quiet inside. By the time I found myself back at our condo, my hands were numb and my chest felt like it had caved in. I didn't know exactly what I planned to do next, only that going back to how things were wasn't an option. That recording, the one I'd left running on my phone, wasn't for blackmail. It wasn't for revenge. It was for me. Proof that I wasn't crazy. That I wasn't overreacting or imagining the contempt in her voice. That I heard her say it, her biggest mistake. I waited. She didn't come home that night. At 2:11 a.m., I got a single text, "Staying at Molly's. We'll talk tomorrow." A classic move. Run. Hide. Regroup. Craft a version of the story that makes her the victim. It was always the same cycle. I'd feel hurt, she'd get annoyed, and somehow, by the end of the argument, I'd end up apologizing for being too sensitive, too dramatic, too needy. But not this time. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of our bed, looking around the room we decorated together, suddenly realizing how many things in it were hers. The throw pillows, the framed quotes on the wall, even the comforter I was sitting on, her pick. I couldn't find a single object that felt like it belonged to me. Not even the wedding photo on her nightstand. Especially not that. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls. Then a message, "Greg, I think we need to handle this privately. Please don't do anything stupid." But I already had. Before she sent that message, I'd forwarded the video to myself, saved it to cloud storage, and attached it to a draft email addressed to 3 of her coworkers, including Brent. I didn't send it. I wasn't sure I ever would. But I wanted her to feel the weight of possibility. The same weight I'd felt for years. At 10:24 a.m., she finally walked through the front door. No knock. No hesitation. She came in like she owned the place because, technically, she did. I watched her toss her purse on the counter like it was just another day, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. "We need to talk," she said, slipping out of her coat. I didn't move from the couch. "So talk." Her arms folded. Her expression shifted into something I knew too well, defensive and distant. "I said something stupid. I was trying to be funny. It was a bad joke. I've apologized already." I blinked. "No. You said you would apologize. That's not the same thing." Silence. I continued. "You called me your biggest mistake in a room full of your coworkers. You flirted with another man 10 feet from me. You texted someone else behind my back. And now you're standing in front of me, telling me I'm the one making a scene?" Her voice cracked just slightly. "Greg, I didn't cheat. Don't twist this." I nodded slowly. "No, you didn't sleep with anyone. You just decided that I was a mistake. That I was disposable. That you could humiliate me and then expect me to fetch coffee the next morning like nothing happened." She opened her mouth, probably to blame stress or blame me, but I cut her off. "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm awake." For the first time, she didn't have a response. She just stood there, caught in that awful space where charm doesn't work and guilt finally starts to itch. But what she didn't know, not yet, was that I wasn't finished. Because that recording, that wasn't the only thing I had saved. Not by a long shot. The truth was, she'd left breadcrumbs for months, and I'd finally started following them. The thing about betrayal is it never starts loud. It's quiet, casual, almost polite, a sudden change in tone. A laugh that lands differently. A locked phone screen that used to be open. That's how it began with Darcy. Not with an affair. Not with a fight. Just small, forgettable moments that stacked up like lint in a corner until it formed something disgusting. And for a long time, I ignored it. I let it collect in the dark because shining a light on it meant I'd have to admit something I didn't want to believe. That the woman I loved didn't respect me anymore. But now that the light was on, I couldn't look away. After our conversation that morning, she tried to act like things could return to normal. She made herself a coffee, sat across from me, and asked if I wanted to reset. That was her word. Reset. Like this was a phone glitch or a software update that went sideways. She even reached across the table and touched my hand. The same hand she'd ignored at the gala while she leaned into Brent like he was her secret. Pulled away. I need a few days, I said. Alone. Her face tensed. Are you serious? I didn't answer with words. I just got up and started packing. Not all my things. Just enough to let her know this wasn't some empty threat. A week's worth of clothes. My toothbrush. The iPad she forgot about. And a folder I'd been keeping in a locked drawer in my home office. You see, I'm not a dramatic guy. I don't scream or throw things. But I'm not stupid. Over the last several months, I had started writing things down. Texts that didn't add up. Nights she came home too late and too dressed up for a work meeting. Conversations she swore we never had. Even though I remembered every word. I documented all of it. Not because I planned to use it, but because something in me knew I might need to. And now I did. I checked into a mid-range hotel on the edge of the city. Nothing fancy, but clean. Quiet. The front desk clerk looked at me like I just lost everything. And maybe I had. I slept badly that first night, tossing between guilt and anger. I wasn't even sure which one I deserved more. Part of me still wanted her to be right. For it to all be a misunderstanding I was blowing out of proportion. But then I got a message. From someone I didn't expect. Brent. The same Brent from the dinner table. The one she laughed with. The one she claimed was just a coworker. It was short. A DM on social media. Hey Greg. I probably shouldn't be reaching out. But I just wanted to say, you didn't imagine anything. A few of us heard what she said. I'm sorry, man. You didn't deserve that. I stared at the message for a long time, rereading it until the words blurred. That was the moment something hardened in me. Because now it wasn't just my word against hers. Someone else heard it. Someone she trusted enough to let her guard down in front of. I didn't reply to him. Not yet. Instead, I opened my laptop and started typing. Not a confession. Not a public post. A timeline. Every red flag. Every lie. Every unexplained weekend trip. Every conversation she twisted to make me feel like the villain. I built it day by day, like I was reconstructing the crime scene of a marriage. And the further I went, the clearer it became. This wasn't just one mistake at a company dinner. It was a pattern. She didn't just fall out of love. She stepped on me, one passive-aggressive word at a time, and smiled while she did it. And I wasn't going to be quiet about it anymore. 3 days passed before she showed up at the hotel. I knew she would, not because she missed me, but because silence makes her anxious. Darcy thrives on control, and me disappearing threw a wrench in the script she'd rehearsed. I was supposed to stay home, sulk a little, maybe sleep on the couch, then crawl back to the kitchen table with some pitiful, "I just want us to fix this" line. That's how it always went. But this time I'd broken the pattern. And that scared her more than anything. She didn't knock. She called from the parking lot. "I know you're at the Primrose Suites on 8th. I'm here. Come down." I almost didn't. I nearly turned my phone off and let her twist. But something in me, the part still stupid enough to want answers, made me go. She was wearing the same coat from the gala. The one with the fake fur collar and the smell of expensive perfume. Her makeup was perfect, but her eyes gave her away. Puffy, tired, nervous. I opened the hotel door and said nothing. "I need to talk," she started. "Somewhere private." I didn't move. "Talk here." She exhaled hard and stepped past me into the room. She didn't sit. She paced like a politician prepping for damage control. "Look, Greg. You've made this into something much bigger than it needed to be." My jaw clenched. "You publicly humiliated me." Her eyes flashed. "I didn't think you heard. And that makes it better?" Silence. She tried again. Softer this time. "I was venting. I've been stressed. Work's been chaos. We've been off, you know that. I didn't mean it. I was trying to make people laugh." "So you reduced 11 years of marriage to a punchline for strangers?" I stepped closer. "Tell me, Darcy. When exactly did I become your mistake? She looked down. That alone told me the truth. She had no answer because in her mind, she hadn't just said it in the moment. She meant it. Maybe not in those exact words, but she'd felt it for a while. Then she went for her usual move. Tears. I don't know what you want from me, Greg. Do you want me to beg? To admit I screwed up? Fine. I screwed up. I'm sorry. Are you happy now? It wasn't remorse. It was panic. She wasn't sorry she hurt me. She was sorry I didn't roll over like always. She was scared of what came next, of what people might think if I told the whole truth. I sat on the edge of the bed, calm now. I don't want an apology. I want accountability. She blinked. What does that even mean? It means I want you to stop pretending this is some isolated incident. That night didn't come out of nowhere. You've been doing this for months. The comments, the gaslighting, the flirting with Owen. You just didn't think I'd keep receipts. Her face paled. What do you mean, receipts? I pulled out the file I brought with me, not to wave in her face, but to remind myself it was real. A collection of emails, timestamps, screenshots. All those just friends' messages. Her changing stories. Even that voice memo I found of her venting to Molly, the one where she called me a dead end with a salary. She reached for it, but I pulled it back. No, you don't get to control the narrative this time. She stood still, arms crossed, shifting between anger and fear. You're going to ruin everything. My job, my reputation. You think people will side with you? I smiled, not cruelly, just honestly. They don't have to. I finally sided with myself. Darcy had spent years building an image. A well-spoken, ambitious, picture-perfect wife. But all it took was a little honesty to collapse the whole stage set. She thought I wouldn't dare, that I'd stay silent to protect her world. But I wasn't that man anymore. She came there to manipulate me. Instead, she watched me reclaim myself. And she hadn't even seen what I had planned for tomorrow. I didn't sleep much after she left the hotel room. She stood there frozen for a good 2 minutes after I said what I said, then muttered something like, "This is insane," and walked out, trying to slam the door but failing because it was one of those soft-close ones that robbed her of drama. I lay there on that stiff hotel mattress, staring at the ceiling, letting the silence spread across the room like spilled ink. I wasn't proud of what I'd done. I wasn't smug or satisfied. I felt hollow, like a man who had just set his own house on fire and was waiting to feel the heat. That morning, I showed up at her office. Yeah, I did that. It wasn't rage that sent me there. It was clarity. See, Darcy's job, her shiny little corporate world, was the one place she controlled everything. She was respected there, feared even. She was the woman with answers, polished suits, and perfect posture. But I wondered, what would happen if someone like me, the man she'd belittled and called her biggest mistake, walked into that world, not as her plus one, but as the mirror she'd been avoiding? I didn't do anything reckless. No scenes. No shouting. I simply asked the receptionist if Brent was available. He was. When he walked into the lobby and saw me, he looked like he'd just swallowed a tack. "Greg, I'm not here to make a mess," I said. "I just want to ask you one question, and I want the truth." He nodded slowly, eyes flicking around nervously. I asked, "Did she ever tell you we were separated?" His jaw twitched. His mouth opened, closed, then finally said, "She implied things were over, that you were sleeping in different rooms." I didn't know. I cut him off. You didn't know because she wanted it that way. He didn't deny it, didn't defend her. He just stood there, guilty and small. I thanked him. That's it. No threats. No lectures. I just turned and walked toward the exit. But I didn't get far. Darcy was coming down the hallway. She stopped the second she saw me. Her entire expression changed. In one blink, she went from composed executive to someone caught with blood on her hands. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted clarity," I said. "And I got it." She looked at Brent, then at me. "You're trying to destroy me." "No," I said, louder than I intended. A few heads turned. "You already did that to yourself." I'm just the guy who finally said it out loud. And that's when it happened. Her mask cracked. Right there in front of her coworkers, people she'd carefully curated opinions from for years. Her voice went sharp. You're pathetic, Greg. You think anyone here cares about your little sob story? You're embarrassing. But no one laughed. No one stepped in to save her. Because the moment she tried to humiliate me publicly, again, she revealed everything she'd worked so hard to hide. That she wasn't just unhappy. She was cruel, vindictive, entitled. I turned and walked out. I expected to feel broken after that, but I didn't. I felt free. Because the thing about masks is, once they slip, you can never quite put them back on the same way again. And Darcy? She didn't just slip. She shattered. It's strange how calm the world feels when chaos finally clears. After I walked out of that building, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't even check my phone. I just kept walking, block after block, feeling lighter with every step, like I'd been dragging something behind me for years and finally cut the rope. Darcy didn't follow me. She didn't call. She didn't send one of her well-worded apologies dressed up like compromises. I think she knew, deep down, that whatever power she'd had over me was gone. I wasn't the man standing quietly beside her at company dinners, smiling while she chipped away at me in whispers and jokes. I wasn't the mistake anymore. In the weeks that followed, I moved out for good. I signed a short-term lease on a small apartment above a bookstore. There's not much, creaky floors, ugly cabinets, but it's mine. I bought a used couch and started cooking again. Real food, not takeout or frozen lasagna. I even adopted a dog from the shelter. His name's Milo. He's missing a toe and doesn't listen, but he follows me around like I matter. And maybe that's what I needed all along, to feel like I mattered. Darcy tried once more. One last email. She didn't beg, didn't apologize. She asked if we could rewrite the narrative together, her words. As if everything that happened was just a bad draft. I didn't respond, because this is the final version of my story. A version where I stop asking why I wasn't enough, and start being enough for myself. A version where I don't need revenge or vindication, just peace. And I found it not in exposing her, but in finally seeing myself clearly. So no, I didn't ruin her. She did that all on her own. I just stepped out of the frame and let the truth speak for itself. Thanks for listening to this story here on Reddit Confessions. Now it's your turn. What moment from this story hit you the hardest, the gala, the confrontation, or when the mask finally cracked? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, we read every one. And don't forget to follow Reddit Confessions for more real, raw, and unforgettable stories.